Just here. 2003.
Yeah.
Indianapolis. It's a while ago now.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Look, when we talk about that race,
exactly.
you won it.
Yeah.
How do you reflect on it all these years?
Well, it's funny, right? It is a long time ago, but it actually feels like it was yesterday. You know, there's certain things that I remember like it was yesterday. You know, like those late restarts. You know, driving the last few laps. I can almost play the whole thing back in my mind.
What were you thinking in those last laps?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I had Elio right behind me, and actually he was quicker. And
Teammate Elio, of
yeah,
course.
yeah, exactly. And he was a little quicker. I knew he was carrying a little bit less wing than me, so we had a little more, call it straight line speed, for lack of a better word. And so I was vulnerable, and the only way I could stay ahead of him was to literally stay flat all the way around.
How big a deal was that?
Well, I was going to say, on the restarts, it was actually quite difficult because, you know, the tires are cooler, you know, yeah. And so they're not up to ideal temperature. You know, they were getting a little bit more worn. And so particularly the first lap, you know, the car is just moving around, is moving around a lot. But I knew that if I wasn't perfect, especially on the first lap after the restart, that I would be vulnerable going into turn 3 and going again back into turn 1. So my total focus was, so don't daydream, don't stop daydreaming, you know.
Just at 230 miles
well,
an hour.
but because you start thinking, you know, I'm going to win, and then this type of thing, right? It was in the lead, whatever, I can't remember, 10, 20 laps to go. And you could be forgiven by thinking, okay, I'm going to win. But I'm like, no, don't think that. So it was like full concentration, corner by corner, you know, entry, middle, exit, you know, just trying to block everything out of my mind, and stay totally focused on my driving. And it was kind of interesting because you cross the start-finish line, and if you probably replay the video, you see that I didn't even raise my hand because I was so like, just drive, you know, turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4. And then Roger came on the radio, well done, you won. And I'm like, okay, is it finished? Yes. Okay, it's definitely finished.
So it's that level of intensity.
Yeah, very intense.
And then when Roger said that to you, what was the overriding emotion?
It's kind of interesting, right? Because I guess I said this kind of interesting before, but I repeat it one more time.
It's all interesting.
Yes, well, it's interesting to me anyway. You know, you spend so much time trying to block out your emotions so they don't get in the way of, you know, good judgment and good decision making, and actually just feeling the car that, you know, cross the line. It really sort of took me a while to get back into the real world, you know, and sort of unwind those controls down and let your emotions come back to normal sort of status.
So how did that win compare to when you won 12 IndyCar races?
Yeah.
How
did I? I don't know how many I won, but anyway, something like that.
I looked it up.
Okay.
How did that win compare?
Why
is Indy so special?
It's interesting, right? As a driver, you know, I was fortunate to win 2 championships. As a driver, in a way, I place more emphasis or more value, shall we say, on the championship wins, because it means that you were the better driver over the course of a whole year with different types of tracks, different types of conditions, facing all sorts of different types of situations, and hopefully the luck factor sort of evens itself out for everyone, which typically does.
But when one of your children said to you,
So
Daddy,
I was
what
gonna,
was the best race you ever
yeah,
won?
so
You would say,
you know, in the end of the day, yes, the Indy 500 is probably the the biggest prize I ever won. You know, so although as a sportsman I lean one way, I also feel, I guess, pride, to have won such a prize in motorsports. You know, when you consider the history of the Indy 500, the people that have won it throughout its history, the moments that it had, it's like, I guess, like winning Wimbledon or one of the the Super Bowl or one of the big sporting events. Globally,
did you drink the milk?
I did drink the milk, and it was thankfully it was quite cold, so that made it kind of nice.
How did people react to you when you were an Indy 500 winner?
Yeah, it's interesting because from that moment on, you always introduced as an Indy 500 winner. You're no longer called by your own name, as your name plus Indy 500 winner, which is a kind of a win, a different. It's a different thing. It takes a while for you to get used to that. You're like, but I'm the same sort of guy. I haven't really changed, but that's kind of funny actually.
Why is Indy such a challenge for a driver?
Well, you're going very fast. There's very little room for error, very little room for error. Physically, it's actually not too bad, but
it's quite a long race. Is it mentally taxing?
Mentally it's very taxing because there's very little room for error. You have to deal with all sorts of different circumstances throughout the race. Wind conditions, tire conditions, traffic, and change in the handling of the car, and trying to maximize every type of circumstance you find yourself in, and make no mistakes, and push the limit on the pit entry, push the limit on the pit exit, and everything makes a difference. So your level of concentration and focus has to stay very high for, to your point, about 3.5 hours, and any mistake can be very costly in many ways. So that's why it's difficult for the driver to manage.
And how is Indy different to other ovals in America? So we're going to run this beast for the first time at Texas. How is Indy different to Texas?
I would say the traditional oval is actually an oval. It's two long corners and connected by two straights. Sometimes the straights are a little curved, but essentially it's two long corners connected by two straights. Indy is a rectangle actually, so it's four distinct corners that are actually very different, and it's almost like a very high-speed road course. So it's a little bit flatter than not as banked as some of the more, call it, traditional ovals. It's actually narrow, it's quite a narrow track, which makes it very unique in many ways. And your line choice is very small. Hence, like I said, you don't have a lot of room for error or for maneuver, so you have to be absolutely precise with what you do. Otherwise, you can be in big trouble.
Well, look, what can you tell us about the car that Fernando Alonso is going to be racing this year? It's brand new, straight from Dallara in Italy. How does it compare, first of all, to a Formula One car?
Well, this car is adapted to do oval and road courses. It's a standard car. So if you were to build a car without any, call it, budgetary constraints and just racing ovals, the car would probably look quite a bit different than this car. But Dallara has done a good job in designing and building a car that I think suits the economics of the sport and runs at the type of speeds that we see at the Indy 500 and road racing and so on and so forth. There's a lot of focus on the strength of the cockpit, because you're running at super high speeds and the car has to be strong enough to withstand, some pretty severe impacts in case you hit the wall.
But in terms of horsepower, weight, things like that, how does it compare?
The car is actually now is probably just a little bit heavier than a Formula One car. Formula One cars nowadays are quite a bit heavier than what they used to be, quite a bit bigger than what they used to be. So weight is kind of similar. IndyCar racing, they have what they call variable power output. So in road course trim, they run quite a bit more horsepower than they run in a super speedway. Otherwise, you'd be going way too fast to run.
How do you limit that power on the super speedway?
It's a turbocharged engine. Okay. They changed the regulation for the boost.
So we're running a Chevrolet.
Yes.
How many horses is it going to be pumping out
well,
come May the 26th?
I don't know exactly, but I think it's somewhere.
Top secret.
No, well, it's somewhere between between 500 and 600, probably on the mid 500s.
Okay.
Which is quite a bit less, like I said, than what they run in road racing trim. And even at that level of horsepower, given the drag characteristics of the car, it runs at about, I think qualifying last year was about 230 miles an hour or something like that.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah. Let's have a look at the cockpit. In Formula One, the drivers are dealing with more than 100 channels on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
How much less is going on in the IndyCar cockpit for Fernando Alonso?
It's different sort of control systems. It's a little bit less adjustable from the cockpit than a Formula One car. A Formula One car have, for example, adjustable brake bias differentials, a lot of different engine settings and so on and so forth. You have different engine settings. You can change what we call the anti-roll bars, but that's not in the steering wheel, but it is in the cockpit. In the Formula One car, you don't have that. Here you have something that they call the weight jacker. Yeah, it's something that
weight jacker.
Yeah, weight jacker. It shifts the balance of the car.
Because does the balance change a lot during the course of 3.5 hours racing?
It does. Well, even every stint is a little bit different throughout the stint and from stint to stint.
Yeah.
So you have a weight jacker.
So the driver is changing quite a lot.
Yeah,
it is.
It is not only during the run, but sometimes during the lap, you make adjustments from one end of the track to the other end of the track, and sometimes you make a small adjustment every corner, depending on wind conditions and tires.
Particularly in qualifying, for example.
Yeah, particularly in qualifying, but also during the race. When you come into traffic, you may make some adjustments to some of these cockpit adjustments that I was talking about. Versus when you're running free air or when the tires are newer or older, you're always playing around in the car. So there's a lot going on. And interesting enough, Fernando, when he did this race in 2017, actually that was one of the things he picked up very quickly.
As a driver, when you're, every corner exit is a wall.
Yeah.
It's Monaco-esque like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
How much of a margin are you leaving?
Look, I can't talk about others. I can only talk about what I did. You have to drive to the limit of the car, and decide at any point during the race, how close to 100% you want to be, and how close to that line you want to live. And at times during the race or even during qualifying, you were literally all the way to as fast as you can go, pushing the limit as hard as you can. And that means that the car will be sliding all the way to the wall, you know. And at times during the race, you play more conservatively. You may want to look after the tires. You may, you know, do different things. But when it's full on, it's full on.
How much easier will it be for Fernando going back second time?
I think there's particularly the first few days is probably easier because, you know, he doesn't have to go through that, you know, first few days of trying to figure things out, you know. But on the other hand, you know, he'll be facing different challenges. You know, this car is a different aero package, a different team, you know, it's us now.
Is that, how big a shift is that for him?
Oh, it's a massive shift, you know. Last time we did in collaboration with Andretti, which is a very competent and successful and experienced team in IndyCar. And, you know, there's a lot that we need to learn and walk through it together.
So for you, Gil, Monaco or Indy?
Don't know yet.
Or both?
Yeah, don't know. I've definitely been in Indy for practice and qualifying, and likely be in Indianapolis, but we'll see.